I think it's time to make a promo for Duffy's Tavern there in Lake George Village, New York. And I guess it's appropriate to address the director of the Lake George Association, and of course the commandant of the Lake George Park Commission there, David Wick. The Post-Star, the Times-Union, the Adirondack Almanac, the Adirondack Explorer, Glens Falls Chronicle, North Country Public Radio. Come on down. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what you'd call her there. I guess she's the director of the educational department there at the Lake George Association. The association. Kristen Wild from Assembly Point, no less. Man, I tell you what, Assembly Point's a very infamous place. I grew up down there on the swamp, by the way, Miss Wild. I just want everybody to understand that, particularly the editors and the publishers at the Glens Falls Post-Star, and that Carl Arnold, I guess, Kathleen Moore, and Gwendolyn Craig down there at the Post-Star on Lawrence Street. They're just a little bit east of Poopy Damano's Restaurante. Jerry Damano's a good man. I like old Jerry. But let's get on to the point here. It would appear that there are people that are leaving floaters in Lake George. Lots of floaters, and they're peeing in the pool. They're peeing in the lake basin. Oh my God. You know, nitrates and phosphates, my ass. They're at sewage. That's leachate. For all you people down there at the State University in New York, at Queensbury, there on the Bay Road, they're pissing and they're peeing and they're pooping and they're crapping in Lake George, and the lake's dying. It's turning green, and there's algae blooms and milfoil and those little Asian clams. I can tell you something about those Asian clams, that, you know, when they give off their larvae, when they're spreading the, what do they call those things when they come out of that little Asian clam? I can't think of it. But when they're in the larva stage, they're so teeny tiny and small, they attach themselves to geese and ducks and all kinds of birds and raccoons, and they get in the bellies of all kinds of fish and snakes and you name it. So it's not just the boaters that are bringing in the Asian invasive species there, the Chinese communists of the smartest lakes in the world. IBM and Lenovo Corporation and RPI University, right in bed with the People's Republic of Communist China. Isn't that fascinating? The smartest lake in the world. Well, to all the aforementioned news reporters and investigative journalists, and Miss Wild and David Wick, when you let the water out of the lake and call it a drawdown, that's the same thing you do when you flush your toilet, David Wick. You draw it down. You let a bunch of water out of the commode to flush the poop down the Poop Chute River, because Lake George is full of floaters and pee-pee. Too many people getting drunk and peeing in the pool, leaving floaters. So, I'm trying to be funny here to make a serious situation easier to wrap your minds around. Because, you see, every time you flush all the floaters and the pee-pee out of Lake George, down the Poop Chute River there at Ticonderoga, you're poisoning Lake Champlain. Now, I would, be more than happy to come up to Lake George and hold a symposium, an educational discussion, what do you call it? An academic investigation of how it is that you flush the poisoned waters of Lake George down the Poop Chute River, and Lake Champlain becomes a great big septic tank. Sort of like the, what do they call that over there? The lake, the Champlain Canal comes up from the Hudson River there and brings up all that trash from New York Harbor and all that stuff up the Hudson River, and it brings it up to Lake Champlain. And then it gets in the Asian clams, and it gets aboard the geese and the ducks and the possums and the raccoons and the snakes and the fish, and it gets into boat hulls, and then they bring all them boats from Lake Champlain over to Lake George, and well, you got Asian invasive species and milfoil, and you got invasive Chinese communists running the smartest lake in the world. Whew, boy, what a story, huh? So yeah, from Assembly Point, where I grew up, there on the what they call, the Swamp Marina, the Withams East Shores Harbor, there at the bottom of Harris Bay. I want to give a challenge to Tom West, the attorney for the Lake George Association, and that fund for Lake George. I don't care what kind of septic systems you try to install on bedrock around the lake basin, Tom. The lake basin's bedrock, Tom West, and you know it. So it's time to take a different approach. And I've got some extremely intense background in construction practices and sewage treatment plants and, building airports and skyscrapers and hospitals. And I held Mr. West, Tom, my old buddy Tom West from Donovans Bay. I worked at Johnson Space Center for many years, on and off, building all kind of facilities. So I've even been around the space program. So, dealing with Blackwater and evacuating, thousands and thousands of toilets out of skyscrapers and shopping malls and hospitals and colleges and things like that. I'm very, very adept at dealing with Blackwater. And gray water too. Now, the gray water too. I'm pretty good at that. There's answers for Lake George, folks. And Christopher Novinsky and RPI University and the Chinese communists, why is it that they own all this technology coming off of Lake George? Why is all their research and all their journals and papers and videos and graphs and all, why is that all secreted when the state of New York's paying for it? Have we got some kind of an investment grant scheme going on up in Bolton Landing? These are questions that are going to have to be answered, Mr. West. I mean, what is what's his name there? Eric Sly and RPI. What is it that they're actually up to with the Chinese communists and the smartest lake in the world? Why do they study it and study it and study it like the Lake George Association, but they never seem to get around to fixing it? I would absolutely love to have a conversation with Ellen Apperson Brown and Kathy Bozzoni and some of the more, with it, astute, awake, woke activists that are tired of people leaving floaters in Lake George. You've got 4 million tourists come up from New York City in the summertime, and that pee-pee and poo-poo's got to go somewhere, doesn't it, Tom West? Mayor Bob Blaze gets it, and I got a few friends up there around the lake that understand that old Judson knows what he's talking about. And here, I'll put it in plain English for you. All the links and the information about this subject matter are posted below, and you'll discover something about my knowledge of Lake George is pretty advanced. I know a lot of the history and the science and the geology and the geography, and hell, I even know where you can get you a great beer and some good rock and roll. Get on over to Duffy's Tavern in Lake George Village and, get jiggy with it. So there's my promo for Duffy's Tavern in Lake George Village. I'm going to leave it right there, everybody. And Kevin and Michael and I forget your sister's name there. I'm sorry, but the old Duffy's Tavern. It's a wonderful place to let your hair down. Folks, I'm going to leave it right there. Now, always, hasta la vista, God bless, and quit shitting in the freaking lake and, go pee over in Lake Luzerne or up in the Great Sacandaga Reservoir. Fine, I know a great place. Go pee in the Hudson River. At least it'll go downstream. We'll leave it right there, ladies and gentlemen. Hasta la vista. God bless and God bless.